Well, here we are. Welcome back, Board Member 101. This lesson is going to look at orientation basics. And that may seem pretty straightforward to you, but there's actually quite a few complexities around it and what you really need to be an effective board member through an orientation and onboarding experience. So today we're going to take a little longer than usual. I hope you'll stay with me. I think it's interesting as we look at the orientation. A new board member checklist that should help you see what you might have covered in your orientation and perhaps some questions you need to ask your CEO or chair. Your 4 core and unique responsibilities as a not-for-profit board. And we'll come back to these over and over again throughout the month because these are your unique responsibilities as a board member. And if you're not doing them, nobody's going to. And then some of the questions you need to ask. Well, we started out earlier looking at why am I on this board? And I hope you've had a time to think about that and maybe record something, at least answer it in your own mind. You are taking on a job, to make a contribution to the quality of life in your community, but you've got particular skills. You've got a perspective and connections. So don't be shy about bringing those to the table and speaking up. Now, each organization is a unique social culture. So, of course, try to understand the unique characteristics of your organization and its governing board before you begin your work. Now, let's look at that new member checklist, and it's also provided as a handout for you, both before your appointment, what should have, could have, would have happened, and then before your orientation itself. So beforehand, before you even think about joining the board, did you review the mission and vision? Did it resonate with you? Did you review the values? Were they consistent with yours? Do you understand your fit with the organization, your motivation for stepping forward? You're not doing each other a favor, as I mentioned earlier, by volunteering and participating. You've got to feel connected and comfortable with your contribution. So I urge you to reflect on this and respond to a couple of questions in the workbook before you go any further. Now, you did have an on-site orientation. You got the binder and the tour. Those are the common elements. And of course, you have our checklist. So from that, you should have learned about the organization's vision, mission, and values, as well as the unique position your organization or agency holds in your community, however you define community. You want to know the basics of how the organization operates, its funding sources, the services it provides, staffing. Can you speak to a few key accomplishments, if you were asked, and some areas of particular impact? You should, through that binder and tour, recognize the role and responsibilities of the board and your role. You should know the schedule and location for regular board meetings, the means of delivery of agenda packages to you, or do you have to pick them up? What are the expectations for participation in board committees, in board development, and in organizational activities like staff events, fundraisers, and so on? You should feel confident and ready to contribute at your very first meeting. Now, if you're not a new board member, you should make sure that these things are in place for people who follow in your stead, because it's a waste of time and energy to have people at the table who don't feel confident, who don't feel comfortable, and are going to take up space for a few months before they get there. We've got to do everything we can to bring people up to speed. Now, it's not possible to cover everything, but you should have got a good foundation. And then our aim is to extend that. You should have received the binder once you were appointed or elected to the board. And these documents will be included for your review. In most cases, they'll also be available online. Now, some organizations will not include these, but you could request them for things like a brief history of the organization, maybe some interesting factoids, key accomplishments. This should be in your binder. An organizational chart, the strategic plan, the current one. What's the current budget and financial statements? A couple of previous annual reports, at least, because that includes accomplishments, plans, financial statements. You should have some information about the board. Who are the current board members? A brief biography of each, photos so you recognize them. Board roles and responsibilities, distinguishing between governance and operations. Perhaps a board member role and job description, or as some not-for-profits have, a member oath of office, or at least agreements on the role, on attendance, on participation, on confidentiality, on time commitments before you start. These things are all very important. What are the criteria for in-camera meetings? Some people call them executive session or private meetings versus public and open sessions and reporting. Is this something you decide on your own, or is there legislation? What's the board's organization? What are the committees? What are their terms of reference? Who are their chairs and members? What are they currently working on? What's the conflict of interest policy? Are there some recent meeting minutes available for you? The board calendar, when are the meetings? When are the events you're expected to be at over the course of the coming year? So those are what you should have now. Now to my most important piece, the 4 core and unique responsibilities or functions, and we'll come back to them. Now, let's acknowledge your board has many roles and responsibilities. But to determine the bottom line, unique and essential tasks, you would do well to know and remember these 4 as pivotal. These form the backbone of governance as leadership. First, set strategic direction on behalf of your community. Again, however you define community. Create a partnership, a constructive, critical, creative partnership with your chief executive officer to ensure that your plans and policies are implemented. Ensure sustainable resources to achieve your mission. And monitor, evaluate, and audit, not just financials, but also programs and services. So let's take them one at a time. Set strategic direction. Well, whether you're actively involved in developing the strategic plan or are simply consulted and informed, you approve it on behalf of your community. You are the window to the community, its needs, its interests, its desires. You're responsible for enhancing your community's assets and mitigating its liabilities while contributing in demonstrable ways to the quality of life of those who live and work in your community. Some actually say that through the strategic plan, where you also review your mission, vision, and values and set out strategic directions, you're creating as a board the identity for the organization or agency. This is not a small task or function. So first, set strategic direction on behalf of your community. Second, create a partnership with the CEO. Develop that creative, constructive, and strong partnership with your chief executive officer, again, by whatever name. Some are nervous about the term, but you have but one employee, that fulcrum between you and the staff and operations. And this is your chief officer. This is your one employee. You select, you hire, you support, you evaluate the performance of this individual. You cannot have a board with impact without a strong CEO. And you cannot have a high-performing CEO without the support of a high-performing board. So it follows you cannot have a vital organization without this important partnership. Now, ensure sustainable resources. We used to call this advocacy, but advocacy is a means, not an end. It's not a goal, it's a process. You need the funds to achieve your mission. They need to be sustaining and sustainable. This is what distinguishes the for-profit sector from the not-for-profit sector. The purpose of the for-profit organization is obviously to make a profit on behalf of its stakeholders or shareholders. In the not-for-profit, for-impact sector, we want to achieve our mission. Our goal is not to be not-for-profit. Our goal is to achieve our mission, again, for the good of our stakeholders or shareholders. So you are responsible for ensuring that the funds are in place, not your CEO, although obviously staff will support your efforts. So you need a plan to obtain sustainable resources to achieve your mission. And then monitor, evaluate, audit. What are your key success factors? Do they advance your mission? How are they aligned? How are your programs and services monitored and evaluated? Is there policy? How is the financial audit handled? This is a board responsibility. What is your policy and procedure? Remember, as a board, we focus on the what, not the how. That is the role of the CEO. So leadership, governance as leadership, of course, and there are many, many other responsibilities. And there are many rabbit holes and tangents we can follow. But these are the essence of board leadership, the unique responsibilities. Now, if you're going to spend time in the weeds in operations, who's handling these? So start with these foundations. Now, as part of this orientation, you'll want to meet with your chief executive officer. So show up and ask questions. Meet formally with the CEO. Now, each board's organizational practice is going to be different for onboarding. And sadly, the responsibility often rests with the CEO, but the chair should at least be involved, presenting together at one session or two separate sessions. Think about it. If it's only your CEO orienting you to the board, you're asking your chief employee to orient you to their employer. That makes no sense. Now, here are a few unique areas for the CEO, however. An overview of that binder we talked about. Ask your operational questions. Ask your why questions. Understand the history, the budget process and roles, the relationship with the primary funders. How do we measure the success of programs and services? How do we measure the success of the organization as a whole? How do we do cost benefit and cost effectiveness analyses? What about our particular sector? And by that I mean the arts, culture, libraries, student government, education, whatever. In your sector, who are our comparator agencies? Who are most like us in terms of budget, demographics, whatever, with whom we can compare ourselves? To whom can we aspire? And why are they the aspirators? What would high performance look like according to the CEO? Are there any current big issues in the sector generally, any trends and issues you should know about as a board member? And then meet formally with the chair. Here are a few areas you might ask the chair about. What are the criteria for performance evaluation for the CEO? When is it done? How is it done? Who does it? Are all of these criteria written down, or do they change over time? What are the committees? You might want to state your interest in particular committees. How is policy reviewed? By whom? When? Have there been any financial issues recently? Who on the board is most competent in finance? Who on the staff is responsible? How can I, as a board member, develop greater financial literacy? What support is there for me? What are some key board accomplishments over the past 5 years? Are there any current big issues? What's on the horizon for the board? Now, if you've never attended a board meeting and you're a relatively new board member, you might want to review the agenda with the chair for the first board meeting that you'll attend. And the chair should guide you through this at the formal orientation session, provide a preview of significant items to be discussed, and the common approaches that the board uses in decision-making. Is it by consensus? Does the chair assess the consensus around the table? Is it by voting? Do you revisit decisions at the next meeting? What are the norms here? And is there a mentoring program for new board members? So questions, lots of questions to consider. Make sure and record them in the workbook while you think about them in this month-long program, and ask them. And no matter how trivial you consider your questions, ask the CEO, ask the chair. And if they're more general and you don't wish to ask them in one of the Facebook groups. Or of course, you can contact me directly by email, phone, or text. So next up, next week, we're going to look at different types of boards and models. And what type of board are you? What type of board do you say you are? And what type are you in practice? And what are the implications of different types of boards for your structure and for your work? I look forward to having that conversation with you. Thank you.